Hello, my name is Reinhild Niebuhr. I'm the founder of the Young Africa Vision. Welcome to this episode of Young Africa Today. Today I'm going to talk about the third financial instrument that I believe God showed me over the last couple of years is necessary to put the whole Young Africa Vision into action. And this financial instrument is called Young Africa Finance. Now, I had first learned about a concept called impact investing about 10 years ago, when I was working with a little bit longer already ago, I think 2006, 2007, yes, because I was working as a consultant for an international, US-based grant maker called the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And the regional director of the Africa program is a man called Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana. Now, he specifically was very interested in impact investing and was working very hard to set up an impact investment fund here in South Africa. Why is that such an interesting instrument? Because instead of just receiving grant money, you basically use the grant funding in order to offer loans to businesses that can then grow and pay back the loan. So in that way, you constantly have income coming in. You don't just spend it on something once off and it's gone. And so I found that as a very interesting concept. And then in 2008, I had the opportunity to visit America. And I made contact with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod in the United States of America. And this synod has a very interesting financial institution called the Lutheran Church Extension Fund. It's not the only one like that, but it's one of the largest non-profit investment funds, really. It really works in the way that members of the church invest money into the Lutheran Church Investment Fund. And then other church members, church workers mainly, and congregations can borrow that money and pay it back over time in order to be able to build new church buildings, to build social institutions like retirement homes or other healthcare facilities, and also school buildings, because that particular church has a large network of private schools. And these schools, the buildings are funded through the Lutheran Church Extension Fund usually. And the congregations pay off the loan finance over time. Now, the exciting thing about a non-profit investment fund is that there are no shareholders that pull money out of the fund, which means that you can keep the interest that you charge of people who want to borrow the money, or congregations that want to borrow the money, relatively low, while you can still pay a relatively high interest rate to the investors. And so you know that if you invest in something like this, you actually are doing something good with your money. Many people, and possibly including you, have investments. You may not think that you have an investment, but if you have a retirement annuity, if you have a retirement fund, and if you have you're contributing to a pension fund, then you are paying money every month to an entity that is investing this money on your behalf. Now, I did a very interesting study, and I will talk a little bit more about that in a future episode. But in 2018, I did quite an in-depth investigation of the South African Public Investment Corporation, which is really an entity that is managing the pension savings of every single government employee in this country. And you can imagine that that's quite a couple of billions of rand that goes into the Public Investment Corporation every month. I mean, I don't know whether it's billions every month, but it's a lot of money every month. And this money has to be invested somewhere. So I started looking where this investment money is going. And I can tell you it is a very, very interesting process. As a journalist, or as a trained journalist, I know that if you want to find out something, there's a saying that says follow the money. So if you follow the money of the Public Investment Corporation in South Africa, you realize that there is a lot of room for improvement in terms of making sure that the bulk of the investments are actually in South Africa and not outside of the border. Why do you want that? Because we want money that we here in South Africa are saving to help build businesses in South Africa. And the same with any other country in Africa. If you have a government that has a pension fund, that money should be primarily invested in businesses or infrastructure inside the country, not outside the country. Why? Because you are trying to stimulate the economy with every bit of resource that you can find. And so anyway, be that as it may, I then decided that there is definitely room for creating a non-profit investment fund as part of the Young Africa financial instruments. And so Young Africa Finance is the investment fund, a non-profit investment fund that is aimed at inviting private investors, even institutional investors if they can, but generally private investors who have a heart for Africa, and find these investors all across the world. My special focus was on Europe and on the United States and Canada, but one can of course find individual investors anywhere in the world, also in South Africa, who want to invest part of their money in a fund, in an instrument that is going to have a social impact, so not only a financial impact. So how it basically works is that you have the investment is into a loan fund. So that Young Africa Finance ultimately, like the Lutheran Church Extension Fund, is going to operate a loan fund. Now this loan is going to lend money only to businesses that have where the Young Africa Investments Company has a majority shareholding in. Why is that important? Because Young Africa Investments is specifically aimed at upholding the vision and the values of the total Young Africa vision. And at the same time, all the companies in which Young Africa Investments is planning to invest in are following the same commitment to 100% accountability, 100% transparency, taking a very frugal approach to paying salaries to directors and to managers and chief executive officers, so that the total instrument, the company, makes sure that the income that the company has is distributed in a more fair and equitable manner between the people at executive level and the people that are doing the work. And in that way, one can build a very safe and stable workplace environment where everybody feels that they are being treated in a respectful way, and where ideally the model of a basic, the minimum wage is around $1,000 a month, which is around 16,000 rand a month. Of course, the work that is done must also be worth that. And as I explained in the session where I first spoke about the ideal basic salary or minimum salary, it depends on how many skills you have, whether you are able to be, to add the value to the company, to guarantee an income of about $1,000 a month. And this would be across the board in any country of Africa where the Young Africa Investments Company would invest and build businesses and infrastructure in. So any funds invested into the loan fund of Young Africa Finance would be used to build businesses in Africa, or businesses owned in majority by the Young Africa Investment Company. Some of these businesses may be strategically in other parts of the world. For instance, I see a huge opportunity for having some retail outlets in Europe and in the United States and in the United Kingdom, which focus on selling products from Africa, and specifically cultural industry products like fashion and music and media, although a lot of that, of course, will also be done digitally. But there's huge opportunity for investing in buildings, in cities where property is very valuable, and making sure that Young Africa Investments not only invests in Africa, but it will also have an opportunity to invest in lucrative investments opportunities internationally. But the main focus is really to invest in the infrastructure, the privately owned infrastructure, in the Young Africa City concept, in the Young Africa Square concept, and in the franchise-based businesses. All of these are relatively low-risk investments because you are using proven models. Infrastructure is generally not a speculative investment. You don't expect a lot of risk with it, and so the business model is quite simple and straightforward, and you make sure that you have tenants for the buildings before you start building them, or buyers for the buildings before you start building them. And so it really is about making sure that the money that is invested in the Young Africa Finance Fund can be paid back easily by the businesses to whom the money is then lent, or by because basically even the private infrastructure will be operated as specific business entities. For instance, if you have an infrastructure is, for instance, a private property development like an eco estate or something like that, and the road infrastructure and everything that has to do with that will be funded through a loan from Young Africa Finance. And the solar energy installations and the water installations, all the things that you need for a property development, which is infrastructure, but really privately owned infrastructure. And so this is something that makes it really interesting, because you are building businesses in Africa, you're building infrastructure in Africa, but you're doing it in a way that actually helps stimulate socio-economic development, because you create opportunities for jobs for Africa's 200 million youth. And not only the youth, also for the adults, for the older and more mature people who are, for instance, going to be interested in buying a franchise. They would, for instance, be people that would be borrowing money to finance a franchise or a part of the franchise, and people who want to buy little apartments because they now have work are going to borrow money to fund their apartment or the house or their business. So there's no consumer debt. There's no loan finance for consumer debt. There may be loan finance for student loans, but generally this would be for postgraduate students who have already proven that they are very committed and very successful at their studies. And the only aim is to help them be able to further their studies so that they can contribute to the intellectual capital that we have here in Africa, and to the research that we want to do here in Africa. And so this is really the basic model that Young Africa Finance will follow. Now, this is the one instrument that I have not established as yet, because I was busy working on doing this, and I had to do quite a bit of exploratory investigation and research on what would be the best country in which to create such a fund. Because in South Africa, South Africa is a good country, but sometimes, from what I have learned, what my investigations have shown, is that actually setting up a non-profit investment fund in Mauritius is a really good idea for many different reasons. And so I have not yet had the time, since 2018, to actually focus on getting the Young Africa Finance instrument set up. One of the reasons is that I was very much busy with the process of research and getting things together when my husband, Nico passed away very suddenly in May 2019. and subsequent to that I took over a business that has been, actually 3 businesses, that have been taking all my time. But I'm now in a position and very excited that I can start pursuing the whole idea of the Young Africa Finance Loan Fund. And I'm hoping that you who are watching this video may be curious about this instrument of Young Africa. And maybe as you are listening, you are somebody who's actually working in the financial or in the investment banking sector. And maybe you also have a heart for ministry and a heart for Africa and a heart for youth. And I'm hoping that maybe someone who's listening is interested in making contact with me, because I do need people to help me get this Young Africa Finance Fund off the ground. I need a founding team that can start up Young Africa Finance with me. Now, Young Africa Finance needs a board of directors, and it needs a chief investment officer. And you have to understand that this is an opportunity where you can earn a salary over time once the fund has been established. But initially I'm looking for like-minded people that are willing to put some of their own private time into making something amazing happen, in the same way that I'm trying to do my little bit. And so I'm really calling on anyone who's interested in either serving as a director of this non-profit fund, or somebody who is really interested in becoming the chief investment officer of this non-profit fund, and focus on introducing the investment opportunity to potential investors locally, anywhere across Africa, in Europe, in America, anywhere across the world. There are many private family offices that might be interested in investing in an instrument like this. And in fact, in 2018, this was my focus. I was actually starting to focus a lot of my energy on building networks and relationships with entities that would be interested in investing in a non-profit fund like the one that I'm describing. And it was quite sad that I had to stop that work, but I still have a lot of connections, and I'm looking forward to waking them up again. However, because you can see that I'm really busy with a lot of other instruments, this is the one instrument where I really am looking for people to help. On all the other instruments, I already have people who are helping me. But on this particular instrument, I need people who are interested to make this happen together with me. And you don't have to be from Africa. Of course, I'm very happy if there are people from Africa. But if you are somebody who's listening to this video who is from Europe or from America, and you share the same biblical values as I do, as I have explained throughout the various episodes that I have been presenting here on Young Africa TV, on Young Africa Today, please reach out to me. Maybe you feel a call to serve in building the kingdom in this particular way, because it really is an amazing instrument. And I was so inspired by the Lutheran Church Extension Fund and by the people in that fund, that I really feel that this was such an amazing opportunity that God introduced to me at the time, and of course at the time to my husband as well. And we were really excited about starting Young Africa Finance. But I also have a very strong understanding of God's timing. I know that sometimes things don't happen for a reason, and very often the reason has to do with timing. And now is the time. Now is the time. Because now I'm able to launch the Academy for Young Africa. Now I'm able to launch the Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program that's going to be starting to reach out to young people aged 18 to 24 in particular. That's going to reach out to church congregations all across Africa, non-profit organizations all across Africa, to start satellite campuses in order to prepare our youth. And the Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program, I will unpack it in greater detail in a couple of episodes when I'm, getting ready for the launch actually in this month. And so, but one thing I can just say is that it's made up of 4 modules running over 2 years. And the first module is about leadership, personal leadership development. And in this module already, young students are learning how money works and how they must save their own money. In the second module, in the second 6 semester or the second 6 months, the students learn about business leadership development. And during this time, young people will start developing business plans and developing an understanding of what it would take, for instance, to own a franchise or to work in a franchise, and to start doing some practical work around that. And during this period, I'm also going to be really focusing on finding franchise partners all across Africa and all across Europe and all across America that can work together to build a huge network of franchise-based businesses in order to enable the establishment of Young Africa city developments, which will have malls where these franchise-based businesses are located in. And so after the second semester, in the third semester, the focus is on community development, and in the last semester, the focus is on global leadership development. And so in total, I believe that we have about a year of preparatory time where we can start creating the Young Africa Finance Instrument, and where we can start inviting private investors to invest some of the money into the Young Africa Finance Fund, and to start funding some of the first efforts, specifically the Young Africa School and Young Africa Square models, which will be our very first starting point. But there are some very interesting investment opportunities that I will be unpacking over the next 6 episodes under the 6 strategic instruments or focus areas, which are Young Africa Community, Young Africa Culture, Young Africa Education, Young Africa Health, Young Africa Ecology, and Young Africa Innovation. And so all of these are investment opportunities that may start already sooner, because they may not specifically require any of the leadership and entrepreneurship program students to be involved directly. They may attract any person who's interested in developing any of these opportunities, and specifically people who own land, who are interested in working with us so that the piece of land can be developed as a Young Africa city, or municipal land that can be turned into an energy and farming operation. There are many interesting options available. Generally, Young Africa Investments will work with private sector partners, but in areas where land is owned by the only land available is owned by either the government or a traditional leadership structure, then of course we will be partnering with those structures as well. But if you own a piece of land in Africa and you are looking for a way of making it highly profitable, get in touch with me, because having a full property development on your piece of land is going to bring you income that a normal agricultural operation cannot. And so there are really some very, very exciting opportunities here. And if you are watching this video and you are based in Europe or in America or in Canada in particular, and you're somebody who believes in the Bible, who believes in God, and who loves Jesus, please start thinking about investing in the Young Africa Finance Fund. Please subscribe to this channel so that you stay on top of the new developments as I give feedback on how and when we are rolling out the different instruments. And I will of course also take you along on the video when I travel to Mauritius to found and to establish the Young Africa Finance Fund. So life is very interesting when you walk with God. That's one thing I have learned. The secret is not to give up and to trust Him and to always ask the Holy Spirit for guidance and to not lose patience, even when because timing is in God's hands. And we just walk in faith, step by step. So thank you for watching this episode. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. If you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comment section below so that I may answer them. And if you are interested in working with me on the Young Africa Finance Fund, please send an email to finance@youngafrica.net and visit the website youngafrica.info/finance. See you in the next episode.